three, two, and one. It looks like we're live. Hey, Mark. Hey, Youssef. Happy Monday.
Happy
Yeah,
Monday.
happy Monday, Charles.
How are you guys doing?
I'm doing great. Obviously besides the market, but it's been but I'm doing good. I'm feeling good. The market has been going down, but it's interesting, so it's been exciting either way.
Absolutely. It's been very exciting. Very exciting for sure.
Yeah. I know there was a comment I saw in the DU, and someone had said that lately lately cryptocurrency has been boring. I commented that maybe it should be, or I think I said it should be, and that was a little bit tongue in cheek. What I mean by that is, as a long-term investor, as a holder, I mean, you're looking for really good deals. You're getting in early, and you're just going to sit around and do nothing for a year or two or longer. So it should be boring. Now, that was tongue in cheek. I mean, obviously it's very exciting. There's tons of news. I mean, this is the largest technical, evolution we'll ever see or have ever seen for sure. And so it's exciting. It's exciting to see all the new tech coming out, all the new applications, all the new rules and the laws, and the infighting, the FUD. So it's exciting from that. But it should be boring in a sense. You just buy something and sit on it, unless you're actively trading the market like Yusuf, and then it's far from boring. As a matter of fact, it's probably back to stressful, right?
It's interesting, and we kind of spoke on this last, Mark, when we talked about like the context in crypto, where there's still, even though the volatility is lower, there's still relatively more movement than you would see in other traditional markets. So people are just really spoiled on how much movement and volatility we've seen in the past. So to say cryptocurrency is boring, even with the low volatility, I think it's a little bit of a stretch. I mean, we want to be fair, but relative to crypto, sure, you could say that it's boring. And like you said, and leaning on what you said, it's a good thing. You can't have, if I try to break it down to people in as simple as possible. So if cryptocurrency was a sprinter, at some point it has to take a break, it has to recharge, has to refuel, eat. So these are the natural things and occurrences we see in the market. So whoever feels that might be boring, then I would suggest kind of get used to it. There's going to be times of excitement and going crazy, and there's going to be times where it might, stale out a little bit.
For sure. And it all comes down to how you're approaching it. So that's why I said, if you're an investor like I am, where you're just getting in and like, hey, this technology is not going to be built out for a couple of years. I'm getting in. I'm just going to enjoy it for the next couple of years. Well, then it's boring. I'm not actively doing anything. Of course, I can follow those companies and I can digest every piece of news. And so it's not boring. But as far as what I'm doing daily, it gets a little bit boring. But then if you want to trade the market, then it's anything but boring. But also, it really comes down to your perspective. And so being a long time investor, I'm used to being in things for a long time. Like, the stock market over the last, I think, 80, 90 years has averaged like an 8.5% return. So that means, on $100,000, you're going to make about $8,000 over 12 months, over a year. And so, like, I had people last year, Ethereum went up 9,000%, and then it got stuck in that, kind of got in that range bound between like $300-400 for a few months, for several months. And people told me, "Oh, Ethereum's boring. It's not doing anything." I'm like, it's gone up like 9,000%. Like, how's that boring? But because for a couple months it didn't really move. But that's just normal in any market. I mean, whether you're sitting on a piece of real estate or any kind of stocks or whatever. So just having that right perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
So every week it's been kind of the same thing, like whatever, Groundhog's Day or whatever, for the last 90 days or so, maybe 80, 90 days, where basically we've been in correction. But we had been in the market had corrected, and then it kind of has just been trading sideways for the last, now 60 to 90 days, where it's been kind of bouncing around. The market cap has kind of been in that 300 to 400 billion range. So week in, week out, kind of the same thing, dropped a little bit, came back up, kind of here. Now, trading the market, there's little bits of gains you can make here or there, but for the most part, we weren't really going anywhere. But over the last 7 days, we actually did go somewhere, and unfortunately, we went down. The market crashed pretty good over the last 2 weeks, but a week ago today, we were at about 310 billion. We dropped as low as 240, which was pretty big, especially when we thought we were holding that 300-400 range. As of right now, I think we're right about 260. So what's been going on with that, Yusuf?
Well, there's a lot of psychological value when it comes to crypto. So that 300 billion market cap was a really important level as far as the market cap is concerned. And we have seen some a little additional consolidation in Bitcoin, which was anticipated. And there's some more consolidation and retracement possibly ahead of us in our futures as well. And I have a chart that I kind of put together that I'm going to try to have it like a living analysis so that as every day passes, we can kind of see and follow how things go along. So the bears, when I say the bears, meaning the selling pressure, they're still pretty much in control. The good thing is fundamentally, I don't really pay too much to fundamentals when I'm trying to trade. So fundamentally, we've seen a lot of good things for Bitcoin, but that doesn't necessarily always bleed into price. So technically, the selling pressure is still pretty heavy. We could see the market cap even under 200 billion. So I wouldn't stress if you guys seen that. And because at the bottom of all of this, I have it at 5K being at the bottom. We could see capitulation. When I say capitulation, meaning just a final sell effort down to maybe 3K, or maybe even lower than that. Whenever this does occur, it's going to occur.
And Yusuf, just real quick, for those of you guys that don't know, that was kind of a big word that you threw out there. So capitulation, that's what he threw out. And so that's what we call the markets when we get past the point of despair. So right. When you think it can't get any lower. And so what Yusuf said was, he said when he first started talking was about market sentiment, and it's still pretty negative right now. The value, and that's why the values are coming down. And so, people are like, a lot of people are going, okay, if we can hold 5,000, if we can hold 5,000, right? And so mentally they're there. And what happens is if it breaks that, then people just in like massive panic, right? So right, capitulation is everybody's just, okay, the majority of the people have given up hope and they're just dumping it.
Right, right. And
so the thing I have to add, though, it's interesting because there's obviously the market, but we also know that this market isn't efficient. It's not like, our stock market where everything has to go through, and settle through the pits. And the thing I want to bring up is, this last week alone, I've been contacted by, multiple parties. And these are for kind of like, I guess not kind of, asking for backroom transactions of quantities, on the small end of 5,000 Bitcoins. To one guy's basically trying to buy up to 25,000, or not one guy, one entity is trying to, accumulate about 25,000 Bitcoins.
Well, what they should do is they should contact the Mt. Gox trustee that has 400 million of Bitcoin they keep dumping onto the market.
Yeah.
Typically transfers that large are done OTC, off the exchange. So like this guy, your contact Charles is asking for. So we should hook them up because the Mt. Gox trustee keeps wanting to dump them into the exchange, and that definitely is hurting the prices.
So I guess it's interesting because, the fact that there are people, let's just do the math, right? 10,000 Bitcoins is that 60 million or 600 million? I can't do it in the top.
40 million.
Yeah, let me make sure I have my zeros right, but there are people.
400 million, like 600 million, something like that.
Is that right? Well, let me see. 6,000, or no, it's at $7,000 right now. $7,000 times 10,000. No, that's $70 million. That's 10,000 Bitcoins. So there are people literally saying, I will buy, I want to drop $50 million into this market or $100 million in the market, but I don't want to buy in the market because for a variety of reasons. One being they probably like I almost wonder that like they kind of want sentiment to drop a bit so that they can get in at a good price, right? Because if someone literally put a buy order, like, you know, if you literally saw, you know, a buy order for 10,000 Bitcoins, you know, that would totally change your fundamentals and everything if that actually showed up on the candles or something, wouldn't it?
Well, you do see that all the time. You see buy walls like that all the time that mysteriously disappear, right, Yusuf?
Yeah, actually, I've never seen a buy wall of 10,000.
Yeah, not 10,000, but massive buy walls.
I've seen some pretty massive buy walls, you know, 100, 200, 500 Bitcoins, very common.
Yeah, but there's people searching for 10,000 and above who are saying, we'll buy all you want, but we won't do it on an exchange.
How would that actually be fulfilled, though, Mark, as far as someone actually purchasing 10,000 Bitcoins?
Well, all those types of deals, no different than the stock market, but all those deals, you know, when you get to that size, they're typically done over the counter, which is what OTC is. So it's, you know, off the exchange. So like right now, governments all around the world are sitting on massive amounts of Bitcoin that have been seized through any numerous types of deals. We have the Mt. Gox trustees still sitting on like 400 million in Bitcoin. And so typically they will sell those over the counter, you know, private party deals. And so then when guys like Charles is talking about, or, you know, these big hedge funds or these big institutions, when they want to buy, you know, they don't come in with 20 grand or 50 grand, right? They're coming in with 50 million. And so any exchange, no exchange has liquidity for that. I mean, no exchange can handle that volume. There's just not the order books for that. So it goes through backroom deals, and, you know, I'm not in that circle, so I can't exactly tell you how like the Rolodex works and how you find those people. I think
do we have an idea of like how much Bitcoin is actually available for sale OTC?
Well, I mean, I have read a bunch of things. I don't have that totaled up number, but I know, you know, just between like you know, the government agencies that have seized Bitcoin. I was recently reading an article and it listed all these pretty well-known seizures throughout the world. You know, and we see it all the time. There was one, I think last week, a group in Spain, I think it was, got, you know, 100 million worth of Bitcoin seized. So we see that happen a lot. So, you know, between that, you know, there's a lot. You know, and then how do they get rid of it? So I don't know how much is out there, but I would guess if I had to put a guess on it just from what I've read, I would say there's $1 billion worth of Bitcoin out there probably ready to be dumped on the market at some point.
No, that's a lot.
Well, you might say ready to be, or people are holding on, right? Because the fact of the matter is...
No, I don't mean people holding on. I'm talking about like agencies that need to get rid of it at some point.
Oh, okay, which is a valid point. So I guess it's you know, so those people are going to dump on the exchanges, but the fact
they don't dump on the exchanges. That's my point. They typically sell over the counter. So like, you know, the famous one that most people know about was when Silk Road, in the early days of Bitcoin. Correct. Silk Road got seized. They took all those Bitcoin and they sold those, and those got sold to Tim Draper. And that was a private party deal. You know, all those deals are private party, so the governments are selling these, and they're doing them typically through like auctions, not on the exchange.
So the thing is, so this is what's interesting. So two of the parties were kind of people wanting to get in. What really intrigued me was one of the parties was someone who's been buying Bitcoin and is running out of sources to get the Bitcoin. You know, has basically been around the block. So what's intriguing to me is, you know, it's like you've got this person who, you know, two of them you could say, hey, they're new to the party. They don't have major Bitcoin positions. One of them was someone that had a sizable Bitcoin position already. I think they'd already accumulated a couple thousand and were trying to basically buy up as much as they could and kind of do it quietly, you know, as quietly as they could without impacting, you know, market sentiment or pricing or things like that. And I'm not gonna, you know, put my conspiracy hat on, you know, conspiracy theory hat on or something like that. But, you know,
but you are.
Yeah, I guess I have. But, you know, you've talked about, you know, institutions want to get in, and, you know, let's be honest, these people are smart money who are used to kind of getting their way. And like, I basically had a conversation with him. I said, okay, you're not going to get anyone who's a long-term holder, because most people with these sorts of, we actually had a conversation. He's like, yeah, I can't get people to sell, at this much. It's like, of course not, because anyone who, with the exception of maybe a government agency that's trying to liquidate stuff that they've seized, most people who have, 2,000 Bitcoins or 5,000 Bitcoins, and who've had them for any period of time are probably not going to sell at this price. And in actuality, they're going to be sitting here accumulating because I think everybody, even with everyone saying Bitcoin's dying, crypto's dead, blockchain's dead, the long-term outlook is still good, right? I think everyone's in agreement on that front.
Well, I have never been, and I've said it many, many times, I've never been like the ultimate Bitcoin bull, meaning, I don't necessarily believe that Bitcoin is going to take over the world like a lot of people are out there saying. I believe in cryptocurrency. I believe in blockchain technology. I believe that blockchain technology is going to revolutionize the world more than we've ever seen from any other technology. I don't necessarily believe that Bitcoin is going to be the coin that's going to do that. So,
yeah, and that's a valid point. I think maybe the better term is most people believe that a $20,000 or $25,000 Bitcoin in the next year or two, a return back to where we are, is not impractical.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. I still think there's a really good chance we'll see a $25,000 Bitcoin for sure. What happens
Correct.
after that, who knows?
So which becomes interesting when you look back at the manipulation side, because someone's basically, or there are people, in the background trying to shake the tree to buy as much as they can at as good of a rate as they can to see it. I look at it as it's kind of like a big game of chicken. Everyone's standing here. Everyone knows it's going to get to 25, or not everyone knows. Everyone believes there's a good shot of it getting to 25, sometime in the next year or two or something like that. And everyone's got cash and they all want to get in, but everyone wants to get it at the lowest price.
Of course.
Or it shoots back up, right? So
yeah, it's no different whether you want to buy or sell. When you're talking about that much volume, you're going to move the market. And so if I put in these massive buy orders, then I'm going to push the price up and I'm going to end up paying more. And the same is true if I want to put in a massive sale order, I'm going to bring the price down and then I'm going to get less. So as a smart buyer or seller, you're always going to try and keep it either off book, or you're going to put it in over a period of time where you don't really move the market against where you want it to go. Unless you have some ulterior motive.
Yep. So, who knows about that one?
Yeah, I'll be really curious when the Bitcoin actually changes hands, OTC, how that's going to play as far as price manipulation in the future. I mean, we've seen the highs of last year, for instance, at almost $20,000, and then obviously the big price correction that we're in now. So I'm really curious to see that the people that are buying these Bitcoins, how they're going to manage those Bitcoins, their crypto portfolio moving forward. And if they're going to release their crypto, maybe let's say, for example, towards the end of the year, taxes, whatever it is, to kind of, again, put us in another correction phase. So that'd be something I'll be really interested in.
Yeah, and we could sit here and talk theories and conspiracies for days, but it depends on what their strategy is, right? So let's say I'm this huge whale, I'm a billionaire, and I buy $400 worth of Bitcoin. I could wait until it's sitting down on that support level, dump it on the market, cause it to drop below the support level, hit capitulation where we have mass panic selling, which then drops it even further, and then buy it back in, right? Well, let's say right now we're sitting on support of 6,000. So I dump, $400 million worth of Bitcoin at 6,000, which then causes it to drop through support at 6,000, hits 5,000, capitulation drops it to 3,000, and then I just buy back in at 3,000.
Right.
And so,
hey, Yusef, were you trading last November, Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash?
I actually was.
See what happened when there was that Bitcoin Cash pump and then dump?
Yeah, it was a mess. It spiked to like 8,000, then an hour later it was 4,000. It was a mess.
So you want to talk about theories or whatever, but do you know around that same time, a wallet that has been traced to Roger Ver, who's, the artist formerly known as Bitcoin Jesus, that wallet transferred 25,000 Bitcoins somewhere. And then, and keep in mind, Roger Ver, who is Bitcoin Jesus, is probably now better known as Bitcoin Judas because he's the guy behind Bitcoin Cash and he owns Bitcoin.com. And then what happened is the mining capacity on a lot of the Bitcoin Cash just shut down during the sell-off and everything on that. And that it's interesting too because Roger Ver's partner in Bitcoin Cash is a guy called Jihan Wu, who's the guy that owns Bitmain, and from a mining capacity with Bitcoin Cash has over 51% of the mining capacity on Bitcoin Cash and stuff like that. So, now we're really getting into conspiracy theories and stuff like that. But there have been also, I don't know if this is related to that or not. I would like to think it's something else. But for a period of time when Bitcoin Cash was first kind of getting going, there were a series of coordinated assaults against Bitcoin where people would literally move stuff, just try to damage consumer sentiment, try to do these sorts of things and stuff like that to build up, their alternative crypto and literally pull like the rug out from under people. It was
wow.
If you're not in it, it's kind of entertaining to watch.
Wow. Wow.
And Roger Ver's attack on Bitcoin obviously was not successful, and with the price of where Bitcoin Cash is at this point, he's probably not very happy about that failed attack because he dumped a ton of Bitcoin and he's sitting on a bunch of Bitcoin Cash that's not really worth anything.
Yeah, so that's that. That's fun to say. Hey, so go ahead.
Go ahead, Charles. Go ahead.
I was thinking, I think now, the G20 meeting people have had time to digest that. Should we chat a little bit about that for a sec, or do you want to jump into something else? I was thinking that might be an interesting conversation in terms of where things are going, fundamentally and everything.
If you want to, sure. I mean, I know we've covered that a bunch of times. I had prepared some other stuff, but we can talk about
you probably have more relevant stuff, on that front. So
yeah, I mean, the G20 is old news. Basically, they said they like it, and the world moves on, right? We had a nice little rally off of that. The bigger problem is, and I saw you comment on that article that's been getting spread around about the cartel suppression. And so the big thing is, and again, we can talk conspiracy theories all day, but the big thing is, if you believe something like that is true, which there's obviously pretty compelling evidence that there is, is the G20 meeting something to let us think everything's okay, but really they're killing it from behind, right? So, especially in America, but human beings in general, if somebody tells you you can't have something or takes it away from you, you want it even more.
Right.
And so, especially in the United States, because we're supposed to be a free country, if they said you can't have Bitcoin, you can't own Bitcoin, or we make Bitcoin illegal, we're going to want it even more. I mean, look at drugs and guns, right? Or I shouldn't say guns, they're legal, but look at drugs, right? So drugs are illegal, but yet it's like a massive $1 trillion industry. They can't even keep them out of a prison. So it's like, if they say we can't have it, we're going to want them. And so is it something where like, if they were to kill Bitcoin, make it illegal, they're really helping it. So what they really do is say, hey, go ahead, knock yourself out. And then in the background, they crush it in price to where nobody ever wants to own it. So, I mean, and that's arguably what's being done like in the gold market. Obviously gold has been an alternative to money, or it really has been the real money for thousands of years. And, at one point, the government of the United States actually made owning gold illegal and actually confiscated it. Then they kind of gave it back because they don't want no government, and not just the United States. The United States is the main one because we have the Fed and the dollar is the world reserve currency, but no government can allow another currency to be out there because governments manipulate currency for their own benefit. So that's how they, they generate debt, and that's how, all the world economies are growing off of debt, and that's because they can manipulate the currency. So if they allow another currency, another money supply to come out that's more sound, people could go to that more sound money. And the world is built on what's called fractional reserve system. So basically for every $10 they take in, they can loan out $9. And those $9 make it to another bank, which means they can loan out $9. And then those $9 make it to another bank, and then they can loan out. So basically you end up with $1 in the bank and millions of dollars outstanding. So if 1% of the people were to take their money out of the bank, the whole system collapses. And if they took it out of the bank, where would they put it? They would put it into gold, or they would put it into Bitcoin. Well, they have crushed, and there's been, hundreds. I've been a gold bug for a long time. There's been hundreds of reports come out on the manipulation of gold markets. And basically what they've done is they've crushed gold so bad, they've broken everybody's dream, and nobody wants to own gold anymore. They just take it away. They don't make it illegal. They just make it where you don't want to own it. And Bitcoin could potentially be going the same way, where they're sure it's legal, go for it, knock yourself out, but they're going to crush the price, and they'll probably bring it back up again and crush everybody again, and maybe bring it up again and crush everyone again, just to break your will to where you never want to own it again. So, right?
Sounds like water torture.
That's the article that's been floating around. I'm not saying that's true or not. And actually, we don't know it's true. We probably shouldn't be spreading more FUD, which is what we're doing. So we should probably talk about some positive stuff, because I see massive, massive, massive positive stuff going on. Honestly, it gets me super excited.
I just got an alert. Telegram, they're up to 1.7 billion now for their ICO offering. Did you hear about that?
Last I saw, they were like 800 million, and that's just beyond stupid.
Mark, that was 2 days ago. It's been 2 days. So.
Yeah, that's just beyond stupid, and it does go back to the theory of positivity, which is just more money rushing in. So, you and I don't have an opportunity to get in on that Telegram deal. That's smart money that's in on that deal, right? So
the minimum was pretty high. The minimum was pretty high to get in on that one.
Yeah, that's for angel investors, initial seed round investors, maybe.
No, it's 1.7 million around. I think 90. It's less than 100 investors for 1.7 billion.
Yeah. So yeah, we don't have opportunity for that. So my point is that smart money coming in. Before I have a bunch of key points that have got me super excited. But before we do that, I know Yusuf had got a couple charts. Do we want to talk about like the last 7 days and maybe the next 14 days?
Sure, let's do it. Let me pull this thing up.
So while he's pulling that up, we're going to look at charts. So this is like technical trading. This is like looking at the charts and understand from a technical perspective, and then we'll get into like a fundamental perspective, which is more news driven. And just so you guys have a good understanding, it's different timelines. So technical trading gives us a really good idea of what happened, and then hopefully helps us give us good probable scenarios for the near future, but doesn't really help us like for a year from now, right? So but let's see what happened and what's probable to happen in the near term.
Sure. So what I have here, guys, is Bitcoin. This is a daily time frame. I'm using Bitfinex. That's the exchange. So I've shared a few Bitcoin charts with a lot more detail. So with this right here, what I'm demonstrating is what you see here in black. These are levels of support. Support meaning where price may possibly go to rest and accumulate, and where there's history of interest. So that's what we're looking at here in these black lines. So in this red line, that's still the main downtrend, and these blue lines, there's these smaller uptrends. This long blue line right here, that's the main uptrend. So what we've seen here in Bitcoin was we started a lower low where in this fractal right here, well, when I say fractal, meaning a pivot point in the market where I'm circling right here, this right here was right around the G20 conference news. That's where people got into the market and it bought back up. Then the market reversed right here, and we came back down. So what I demonstrated was with this black line, we broke this black line, which was support, and we also broke this little blue line right here, which was a smaller uptrend. So we broke that, and we came down to the market right here. So over the last 7 days, we've been trending downwards, and that came off of the G20 conference news, where we had a little bit of a bounce up, and it crashed a lot harder since that bounce back up. So where we are going forward is what I anticipate to happen is we'll see a little bit of a ranging move inside of here. This little area that we're in between this black line and this main blue line right here. I expect it to range a little bit, but eventually come back down and then retest the bottom side of this blue line, and then to come back down and break this black line right here. So I still see the bears in full control of Bitcoin in this move at this particular time. In order for me to change my sentiment and get bullish, the very first thing I would need to see is a price break above $7,500. I don't think that's going to happen, but $7,500 would be the first thing I need to see. The second thing I need to see would be a rejection from this minor uptrend. For it to come to this uptrend, bounce off of it, come back down, possibly retest this support line, and then break upwards again. But if we come back up, we touch it and retest and then go back upwards, that would be a bullish move. As of right now, I have no indication to believe that that's going to happen. My probabilities are all still towards the downside. And if we take a look at the smaller time frame, I want to point this out real quick. To kind of give you guys a little bit more of an in-depth look. If you take trend line right here, you can see we don't really have enough energy or interest in Bitcoin to even break this minor downtrend. So as soon as we got to it, we fell back down. If we was to break it up, if we was to break through over here, that would tell me something different. But we haven't been very strong in Bitcoin as far as the bullish interest. So we see a little bit more of a slide back. Don't be surprised. I don't see anything really bullish occurring right now, and we can see lower prices.
Yeah. Go back to that daily chart. So on the daily, the scenarios were hopefully breaking 74, 75, retesting, and then bouncing back up again. That's scenario one.
Right.
Scenario two is getting rejected and then bouncing lower down to that 5,000 support line.
Right.
One thing that I hate to get back into this conversation, but one thing that a lot of traders really believe in is that, the manipulation of the exchanges and the whales working in coordination, right? So whales are market makers. So every time you buy or sell, somebody has to take the other side of that. And so they have market makers that provide massive liquidity to the exchanges. And so you can see from November, from that November climb, it went straight up like parabolic, and those market makers got overextended, and then they have to true up their order books, right? So coming back down to that, 5,500, 5,000 level trues them back up. Do you buy into that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, these are all just evidence points that help us draw a conclusion. Because at the end of the day, we don't know. Nobody's got a crystal ball, but we look at these history, these trends, we look at the charts to help us judge or guess where we think the market's going. And so he's laid out the scenarios of what could happen. And ultimately, we have to wait and watch and see what does happen. But then based off of, the information we have, you can kind of make a probability guess of what would eventually happen. Is that right?
Sure. And even within these possibility outcomes with Bitcoin, there's tradable action plans that I've always stressed about as far as, and if you guys have seen where if X happens or B happens, then we go to Z. So we have a real action plan as far as what to do and when. But this is just taking a broad general outlook as far as the next 5 days, 7 days, 2 weeks, what's to happen. The thing is, the longer we stay under 7,500, the bigger the drop is going to be. So if we get a drop now, it's actually a bullish for Bitcoin. I know that might sound crazy, but if we start to drop now, it's actually bullish for Bitcoin. If we stay underneath 75 and stay above 62 for the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, then that's actually very bearish for Bitcoin. So we want to get this dropping out the way so we can get back into our bullish form. So the sooner the better, guys. We want this thing to drop and just, clean house, get back organized, and so we can get back into our bullish sentiment.
Great. Good stuff.
No, definitely. What's interesting, I guess, so my first thought is by looking at your trend lines is that there's a bounce around the corner, but you're actually, because usually you test it, it looks like it hit, I don't know the right term, but I would think you'd be ready to like recover up to like 8K or 9K before then dropping again. But you're saying that the bounce didn't recover fast enough, or it's going to go down more, Yusuf?
Well, I mean, if we're just looking at the patterns that it's forming right now, it's looking like it wants to drop some more. But if you're looking at this rejection in price right here, that would give you some optimism that we're going up a little bit higher. If we break 7,500, honestly, for me, it looks like it could just be not necessarily, I would call it a bull trap, but for people that trade like myself, they would get excited about this and jump long into Bitcoin just to kind of get ran over on the backside where Bitcoin later fell back. So I wouldn't get excited about 7,500. I wouldn't get excited about 8,000. For me, I would need to see it come up through this black line, come back to the black line, form solid support, and then at best, it will be a scalping opportunity to take it back up to this uptrend. I just don't see that happening right now with the type of price action that's in front of us. This major engulfing candle, this long red candle, that has to be respected. And a lot of times in crypto, particularly in Bitcoin, because we're optimistic, we kind of ignore the facts that's right in front of us. So if I see this long engulfing candle, that tells me that smart money wants to push the money down, wants to push the asset. And I have to respect this until something else occurs that clearly violates this. And nothing has occurred to violate this as of yet. So I have to remain, in my shorts or bearish until something really convincing happens. Because this right here, this is convincing price action. This is institutional money saying we're going lower.
Yeah, no, that could be Mt. Gox dumping a bunch, or who knows what that is on that front, right? And then They hold back and let it recover, and then they go kind of shake the trees out a little more until they're all done on that. Oh, interesting. Okay, so right now, are you holding pattern? Are you short? You're obviously not long. So I guess what was the turn? It's turnaround Tuesday, or it's not touchdown? Is it turnaround Tuesday or touchdown?
Tuesdays.
Yeah, so we're waiting for Tuesday. So that's when that's where the signs tell you what's going on, right?
Yeah, and see the thing is, if we're going up until Tuesday, which it looks like we're bouncing up a little bit, that would actually set up perfectly for our sell. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if we got a little bit higher towards the $7,300, $7,400 range, and turnaround Tuesday came about and we sold again. So, right now we're kind of in open air. We had a trade up here. We took that trade. But right now we're kind of open air. If, you could scalp it, I guess, on a little buy. But the trade that I'm waiting for is price rejection at this black line or close to this black line and then going a little bit lower. And honestly, we may not even get there. We may just kind of travel sideways and then break through this little blue line that you're seeing right here. So we may not even get back to this black line in all fairness. So we're going to see.
Nice. So for someone like me who, knows enough to be dangerous, but also knows that I have no idea what you're talking about and predicting any of this stuff, so I did hold some of my March money back, and now it's April, so I've got new money to put in, to buy. So, putting the money on the table, do I kind of hold on to it for a bit longer, see if it can, touch 5K? And obviously, this is pure conjecture, right? So
sure.
Do I put more money in, on that front?
Sure. I think it's smart for most people to scale their buys in. for me, I'm watching charts 24/7, literally
Yeah.
24/7. So, and even when I do watch charts 24/7, there's people that just randomly invest, and sometimes they get better entry prices than me.
Mhm.
Honestly, just by throwing money in the market and sometimes just getting lucky. So, for me personally, I think that if you have some liquidity, then if you was to buy into Bitcoin, even at where we're at 7,000 right now, still a pretty solid buy. I mean, it's really hard to make an argument buying Bitcoin at $7,000 isn't a smart idea. I just can't make that argument, even if we see those much lower prices. So for the casual investor, I would say, layering your buys at particular price points. 7,000 is a legitimate price point as far as buying in. 5,000 legitimate price point. 3,000 is a legitimate price point. So your dollar cost averaging, and I think, and my belief is that over the course of this next year, you're going to be off, very well with Bitcoin and crypto in general if you do just that. But so it's different strokes for different folks. For me, I have no problem in waiting for Bitcoin to drop a little bit lower, and I might miss out a little bit too. So I'm okay with that as well. So it all depends how you feel about it.
No,
Well, and
definitely.
it depends on your strategy. So, if you wanted to buy and hold for the long term, and you missed this buy level and it went up, and you could never buy in this level again, that affects your strategy. If all you're trying to do is make profit from buying low and selling high, it doesn't really matter if you miss this price level because you'll just make the gain on the next move. So, really, you have to understand what you're looking for, what your strategy is, and then play the market accordingly.
Absolutely.
No, definitely. No, these are all good discussions. I know for, our audiences, we've got some short-term guys that are riding waves. We've got more longer-term people and everything. So I think it's good to look at both perspectives on this front.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Let's continue. Mark, you had some fundamental things you wanted to add now to this?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a whole lot of time left. So I guess I could just breeze through it pretty quickly. It loses some of the effect, but yeah, I mean, I guess just ultimately, it all comes down to strategy and how you're going to play this, right? And what you're ultimately looking for. And, I know people who were still waiting to buy Bitcoin at 4,000 and never got that chance again. So, you just kind of have to figure out what your strategy is and how that fits in. And I think there's room for both strategies as well. I use the analogy to real estate a lot just because it's easy for people to understand. But you have investors who buy a piece of property and sit on it, and eventually in 20 years from now it's paid off, or 30 years it's paid off and it's worth a lot of money. And you have people that want to buy a property and flip it, buy, flip, buy, flip, buy, flip. And they're two totally different strategies. And sometimes people do both at the same time. And so you just got to figure out what works for you, what you're looking for, how much time, how much risk, et cetera, and then decide, how that fits into your portfolio. But what I like to do is, from an investing standpoint, is look for trends that are happening, laws, rules, regulations that are changing and are going to affect things. So like back to a real estate analogy, let's say that, like, for example, in Daytona Beach, Florida, right now, they've passed all this new legislation where they're going to redevelop the downtown. And over the next 5 years, they're going to build a new convention center, an international airport, and a new pier, and they're going to increase their marketing, and they want to really build up that town. And they're going to do it in this one area, and that's going to happen over the next 5 years. Well, I might want to go buy a couple pieces of property in that little area and sit on it for 5 years until that trend develops, and then sell those properties. And so I'm using that as an analogy because that's kind of what we do here as well, right? We see laws, rules, regulations that have been put in place that we know over the next couple of years are going to materialize, and we're going to buy into that trend now. And we're just going to sit back and wait for that trend to develop. And the reason why that's super important to understand is that you probably hear the argument a lot from maybe your friends or family that are not involved in cryptocurrencies. And the number one argument they always say is like, what good is it? What can you even do with it? What can you even buy with Bitcoin? What can you even do with these cryptocurrencies? Well, the truth is nothing. You can't do anything with it. I mean, yeah, there's a couple use cases, but the reality is nothing, because the trend's not developed yet. And so we're looking at a technology adoption cycle. And so we always draw comparisons back to the last technology boom, which was the internet boom from 1990 to 2000. And in 94, 95, even in 98, 99, we had the famous pets.com launch and crash because nobody was online buying stuff at that time, right? And that was even like in 99. And nobody...
Well, you can look at that. You can look at also, remember Cosmo.com? I mean, do you remember those guys?
Nah, I don't remember it, but we could draw. I mean, basically anything that you invested in from 95 to 2000 wasn't usable. And in 2000, or in 95, 96, 97, if you bought into Amazon and your friend said, what the heck are you buying with Amazon? What can you even do with it? Well, the truth was you couldn't do anything with it. But obviously now you would be so rich you wouldn't even know what to do with it. So my point is that we've recognized a trend. We're riding that trend. But the truth is we have to wait for that trend to develop. And the reason why I want to tell you that and I want to make that point is because you have to understand what you're doing. Yes, you can get in like Yusuf and you can play the market and you can make little bits of money. Otherwise, you have to wait for the trend. And so, I've made this point just recently with some people I've been talking to on an individual level. And I just asked them, do you believe that this technology, blockchain technology, do you believe that this technology is going to be a huge revolution? Do we believe it's going to be the future? Do we believe it's going to impact the world like we think it is? And if the answer is yes, okay, which it is for me, if the answer is yes, then we go, okay, who will be those key players in that future world? Let's jump in with them now, and then we just wait until that trend develops. And the reason why it's super important to understand and kind of approach the market like that, at least from an investor standpoint, is because when do you know when to sell? Like, you've probably all heard that if you would have put $1,000 into Bitcoin in 2010, it would be worth $90 million today. I'm sure you've all heard that, and you all have these dreams of it putting $1,000 in and having it worth 90 million. But the harsh reality is you never would have, even if you put $1,000 in, you never would have made 90 million. And the reason why you never would have made 90 million is because you would have had to watch it drop 80, 90% multiple times. You would have had to watch, and then why wouldn't you have sold when it hit, if you put 1,000, when it hit 10,000, you sold, or when it hit 20,000 or 1 million or 5 million, you sold. So you would have sold either at the low or the high, but you never would have made it to 100 million unless you're able to approach the market like I'm talking about, where you're recognizing this trend. Like with Amazon, I bought in with Amazon, even though it wasn't usable, and I'm not going to sell Amazon until it reaches its potential of where I think it can go. And so that's kind of how I look at things. And so I'm going to skip, I had prepared some charts to kind of put this into perspective for you, but I'm going to skip that for now. But what I will tell you is what I believe is that, again, using the stock market from 1990 to 2000 as a guide, we see that from 1990 to 1995, it was all individual investors like you and I, retail investors. And it wasn't until 95 is when we really had the institutions come in. So the institution, think Wall Street, pensions fund, hedge funds, etc. And from 95 to 2000, it just took off like crazy. And actually, I'll show you one chart that I put together that kind of illustrates this. And then I have a couple news points that I want to bring up to help illustrate this a little bit better. But you can see right here, you guys see that chart?
Yeah, we see
wow. Look at that, yeah.
So you can see really from 1990 to 2000, you can see this, what we call a hockey stick. But it wasn't really until right here is where things started taking off. So from 1990 to 1995 was all individual investors like what we've seen in the cryptocurrency space. And the first kind of public IPO was Netscape in 1995, and that signaled the incoming institutions, and then it just took off. But if you look at this, and that's where I think we are. Right now we're in 94, 95, which is the institution or the individuals have taken the market as far as it can go. And the next shift is going to be coming from the institutions. But as good as this looks, and you're like, shoot, I could have just bought in 1990, come back in 2000 and made a bunch of money. You also have to look that there's a ton of drops here. I mean, look at this big drop. This is a 2-year bear market, 2 years. Now, how would you have held for 2 years? Only if you understood the trend of the internet becoming the, this transformational piece of technology. And I knew Amazon, I knew Cisco, I knew Microsoft were going to be the big players. That's the only way you can hold through this. And it's no different than when I look at Bitcoin right here. So here's Bitcoin. If I would have bought right here and just held to right here, I would have made all this money. But what you're not looking at is this drop right here. Like that drop right there, right here, shook everybody out. I saw it go from, $200 to $1,200 and then back to $400. I would have dropped out, right? So and then it jumps up to here. So I dropped out, and it took a couple years for me to get back to my money. So right here, it hit like $1,200, and it took like 3 years to get to $1,200 again. How many times would you have sold out? It's never coming back. The technology's dead. And then finally it jumps up to like 3,000 and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm out. Boom, 3,000, I'm out. But if you understand blockchain technology is going to change the world like I believe it is, and you understand who these leaders are going to be, you just got to ride the trend. And so what I want to talk about just real quickly is I've been saying they're coming for a long time, and you guys are probably tired of hearing the institutions are coming. But I believe 2018 is the year for that, and I want to give you just a couple of reasons why I think that, some concrete stuff. I know we're running out of time, and I'll get through them quickly, but basically, as I said, I think the individual investors have gotten it as far as it can go. And I think this is the year for the institutions. And so what we've seen, and we started at the call and I was talking about this, where we're in a pretty bad bear market right now. And actually, if I share my screen again, shoot, where'd it go? Anyway, if I'm not going to share my screen, but so we're in this like multi-year bear market, like 94, 95. But what happened at that time is the same thing that's happening now, which is the market's crashing, but we have big money coming into the space. And so that's what we want to pay attention to. Yeah, we can look at like, oh, Twitter banned cryptocurrency advertising, but that's small news. So here's a couple things that have happened. First of all, we had the CBOE, which is one of the regulating bodies in the United States for commodities. They have put a formal request into the SEC, Securities Exchange Commission, to allow a Bitcoin ETF. In writing, they sent a formal request to the SEC saying, please allow Bitcoin ETFs. They told in the letter, they wrote that they believe markets are now ready. And I cannot even begin to tell you how big of news that is. Now, we had futures come available, and that was big news because that was the first time that Bitcoin and Wall Street actually came together. But the difference of futures and ETFs are massive. So futures are what really, really smart investors do to bet on the market. They don't buy the asset, they just place bets as to which way they think that asset will go. So really, it's just a form of manipulation. The difference of an ETF is an ETF actually buys and owns the asset. And then it makes it very easy for anybody with a stock trading account, Fidelity, a 401k, an E-Trade, whatever, to buy the Bitcoin ETF. And as more people buy the Bitcoin ETF, more Bitcoin gets purchased and held. They're actually buying the asset. And as we've seen ETFs in gold, silver, and other commodities, it can really push the price up. And so really, it's the easy button. A bunch of you guys have gotten in early and you're really frustrated because trying to set up an account on Coinbase or do the KYC, it's a big pain in the butt. And it keeps people out of the market. It's a barrier. But when the ETFs come in, it's the easy button. Click, buy, and it's going to push the price up. So that was massive news. And then what else is massive news is that we saw about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, a Goldman Sachs company subsidiary bought the Poloniex cryptocurrency exchange for $400 million. Now, $400 million is a massive, massive inflow of capital. I know we throw around billions, so maybe that doesn't sound really big, but it is. And so if you don't understand who Goldman Sachs is, they are like They're
I
the
mean,
bank.
they're the guys that advise the Treasury. They're one of the most venerated and well-known Wall Street firms. I mean,
Anybody who's
yeah.
worked at Goldman Sachs has worked at the Fed, the Treasury, the government, and back and forth, back and forth. So they're as in as you can be. And so if they've spent $400 million to buy a cryptocurrency, not a fiat to crypto exchange, but a crypto exchange, that means they believe in where this is going. So that's a massive inflow of capital. But then we saw just last week a South Korean multi-billion-dollar conglomerate partnered with OKCoin Exchange, which is the third largest exchange in the world. And they partnered up to make this conglomerate, and they're in with the government. So it's like multi-billion-dollar conglomerate with the government just partnered up with OKCoin, the third largest crypto exchange in the world. Massive. I mean, we're talking billions of dollars, governments getting in on the third largest crypto exchange in the world. So we have Goldman Sachs getting in on the largest crypto exchange in the US. We have Korea and the government and billionaires doing the same thing there. And then we saw also in South Korea, a group of investors bought another crypto exchange called Bitstamp for another 400 million. That's 3 deals in just in the last couple of weeks of 400 million or more. And we're talking governments and billionaires and banks. And then Yahoo Japan just announced that they're going to launch a crypto exchange in 2019.
Well, I think it's also worth noting too, because you said 400 million doesn't sound like a lot, but it actually is, because if you look at the market, if I placed, or not me, but if someone placed a $400 million buy order worth of Bitcoins today, like just put that on the market, an open buy order, that would be an order for what, that'd be about 70 or 80,000 is that right? 70,000 Bitcoins. That's $400 million. And that would probably increase the market cap of Bitcoin by way more than $400 million, right? That would probably drive your market cap of Bitcoin from, say, $7,000 a Bitcoin up to, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 grand. So,
yeah, but I mean, I don't believe that looking at it that way even comes close to cracking the magnitude of what we're talking about here.
Interesting.
So first of all, I can move the price of Bitcoin with a $100,000 investment. I don't need 400 million. So it really has nothing to do with that. But I think you're totally missing the ball or on this, because you're talking about Bitcoin. I'm talking about governments and billionaires investing into infrastructure. You see, infrastructure like building new roads allows people to come in. So I'm talking about building roads and highways and infrastructure that will allow all these billionaires that are sitting here to now navigate their way into the market. We're talking about something way bigger than the price of Bitcoin. We're talking about the market going from 200-300 billion into trillions of dollars. And right now you have these institutions sitting here and they have the market here, but they can't get there. There's no infrastructure. I'm talking about investments into the infrastructure to allow this to merge. And we had 4 massive deals happen that nobody paid attention to. Everyone's like, oh, Twitter banned it and this and that. Who cares about Twitter? I'm talking about bringing trillions of dollars into the market, and we just had those things happen and get swept under the rug.
Well, I think there's a reason we keep you around, Mark. I'm kidding.
What, to keep the positivity?
Well, no, it's so easy to get caught up in all the stuff, right? Oh no, MailChimp is not letting us send emails anymore. Twitter's doing this. The sky's falling down, right? And you hit us on you hit us right between the eyes with.
And the reason why it's super important, as Charles, as you know, I'm like a student of history, and because I believe, right, they say what those who don't know history are bound to repeat it, right? So I want to study history so I can see kind of where we're going. And again, right, we had this transformational shift from 1990 to 2000, but it was 94, 95 that really changed everything. And what I saw was the shift from individuals to institutions. But I also saw in this multi-year bear market, massive, massive investment into infrastructure. So that's exactly where we're lining up. We're in a bear market in the middle of a transition, and we're seeing massive institutions investing into infrastructure in a bear market that will then propel us into what I call boom 2.0.
Well, that's smart, because if they're getting ready,
They're getting ready. They're getting ready. And what happens, unfortunately, and it really makes me actually sad, is that what happens is right now is the weak hands, the individuals are giving all their money to the institutions. You don't sell at the bottom of a market. You're giving your money to them. We want to hang on to that money. And the way that we do that is understanding this shift. Do we believe this technology is going to be what we think it's going to be? And if so, we need to wait until it reaches mass market appeal. Just like buying Amazon, don't sell Amazon until they control the online world. If you would have sold it any time before, then you didn't make your full potential. And the only way you can do that is, one, understanding, you know, the trend. Also, what's super important, and I always talk about, is rational position sizing. Putting in 500 bucks, put in $1,000. If I put in 500 bucks, I don't care. I'll let that sucker ride for 5 years. If it drops to 80 bucks, what do I really care? That was like a nice night out for dinner. Now, if I put in a bunch of money, I get really stressed out. And then I'm super bummed out. It's down here. And as soon as it comes back, I want out of the market. I can't handle this emotional roller coaster. So how you handle that is listening to people like us help you understand that. But two, rational position sizing, even position sizing, right?
Wow. Well, I know there's still, we can go on probably forever and ever, but, you know, people have been on. We still have, 50 people tuned in on the live and everything on that front. So it's about time to wrap things up. For everyone who's out there listening in, we've actually got the lander up for our upcoming blockchain conference. And we are going to expand it. And this is also in terms of what we're looking at. You know, in addition to crypto, the other big market that we've gotten interested in is the natural medicine market. There are obviously plants that are in the process of being legalized that have very interesting properties to solve things like pain relief and everything. So literally, for everyone who's out there, check it out. It is called powercon.io is the webpage. Youssef will probably be teaching a class there on the trading and the technical side and everything like that. So if you want to be able to interact with him and, you know, get all his knowledge, I mean, I'm just blown away every time I talk to you, man.
Yeah, I want some of that knowledge too. I'm there for sure.
No, it's great. You know, Mark will be there chatting about asset allocation and everything. We've got some exciting announcements on the ICO side of things. We've got some new blockchains that are getting rolled out. We even have some really interesting, I mean, honestly, I can't be more excited because, like, the two industries that get me really excited are, you know, pot and blockchain. And we're going to be doing both. So, you know, it's going to be great. So I'll post that link in the comments and everything to the page. It's coming up in early May. So, it's you still have time to register, still have time to make those arrangements, and it's going to be a blast. It's going to be a good time. So with that, everyone, thanks for tuning in. We'll catch up probably, people who are members of the DU, you'll be seeing us more this week. Everyone else, I'm sure we'll catch up maybe with some of the interviews scheduled for this week or same time, top of the morning, Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern. So great stuff. Thanks a lot, guys, and I'll see you guys soon.
Thanks. Appreciate it, guys.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.